As we load everybody into the webinar, we'll just give it a second for everyone to actually get started. Looks like we've got all the panelists in. And we've stopped loading, so we'll go ahead and get started here in just a second. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great day. We'll go ahead and get started with the webinar for the Palmetto Priority. A quick introduction. My name is Douglas O'Flaherty. I am with the South Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association, and I welcome you to the webinar today. We'll go ahead and get started, but first I'd like to remind everybody that your lines are muted. And the reason they're muted is just because we are recording this webinar and we want to make sure that we have a clean copy to be able to upload for you to be able to use, to reference back, share with other restaurateurs in the industry, or for those folks that could not attend today, they'll be able to watch at a later date. If you have any questions, please, at the bottom or top, depending on how your screen is, there is a Q&A feature on your page. If you'll please utilize that Q&A to ask any questions, we will get to them. We have a couple of staff members monitoring the Q&A section, so just go ahead and type in your questions there. I would encourage you to maybe listen to the presentation. It may answer your question before you actually have to take the time to type it. And then lastly, before we get started, I do want to state that this is an information webinar. It is off the record. This is not meant to be on the record. If any members of the media have any questions or would like to reach out individually for interviews, they can reach out to Lenza here in our office, and her contact information is on our website. So we'll go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome and introduce John Durst to provide a welcome for everyone. John?
Yeah, thank you, Douglas, and good afternoon. Greatly appreciate each of you joining us today so that we can talk further about what is a very exciting initiative that is being made available throughout our state. During these unprecedented times, we've witnessed the incredible strength and commitment of our hospitality industry to recover. With the help of our partners at the federal, state, and local levels, we have developed guidelines that provide a roadmap to strategically maximize and to hasten our recovery. These guidelines are largely industry-driven and reflect the incredible collaboration between the Governor's Office, DHEC, PRT, the Department of Employment and Workforce, DOR, SLED, Accelerate SC, those among others. And so on behalf of our partners, we were extremely pleased and honored to participate in the governor's announcing this Palmetto Priority initiative on Tuesday. As we continue to work together, we look forward to strengthening the results of our unified push for a shared, clean, safe dining experience for both our restaurants and our patrons across our great state. That's what the Palmetto Priority is all about. Working together, we will be a model for resilience across our country and truly be South Carolina strong. As I mentioned, one of our very important partners through this process has been the South Carolina Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. The director, Dwayne Parrish, has been a driving force toward helping lead our state during these very difficult times. Dwayne was instrumental in the service that he provided Accelerate SC and continues to provide, and also his leadership to the tourism industry across the state. It certainly is no surprise that last year he was elected by his peers to be the top tourism department leader in South Carolina. it's my great honor and pleasure to turn it over to my good friend, Dwayne Parrish.
Thank you, John. I just want to test it. Douglas, can you hear me okay?
I can, sir.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. First, let me say thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and everyone else on here. And also thank you for the opportunity to partner in this program along with DHEC and the governor's office as well. You know, obviously, just sort of give everyone a little quick background that you may or maybe you're already aware of, but just to reiterate is obviously as the number of cases have risen over the last few weeks, there's been both public pressure, media pressure, if you will, about various things such as masks, should things be open, closed, et cetera, and so forth. The governor has been very business friendly throughout this entire time, ever since the COVID crisis sort of started, and has sort of leaned toward business to try to stay open if at all possible. And he very much believes that as well in terms of government mandates or government dictates. And so when in my conversations with the governor, some of that was so, listen, he would much rather something be sort of industry born and healthcare approved than having just something simply dictated by the governor's office. So we saw an opportunity with John's partnership and John, Douglas, Bobby, and even Helen Hill, who were all on Accelerate SC, the things that came out of there in regard to recommendations for hotels, restaurants. We saw an opportunity to take this another step further and say, okay, given the media's heightened concern around restaurants, and I know restaurants are very personal because people eat at restaurants. You know, I understand that even though it's not a foodborne illness, people still get different around that. The other factor is that somebody sits down to eat or drink, obviously you can't do that with a mask on. So a lot of factors play into a restaurant that don't play into a Lowe's or a grocery store or some of the other places. So we wanted an opportunity though to have restaurants essentially pledge to agree to certain things and be sort of certified by the state and the South Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association with DHEC's blessing to say that, look, we're agreeing to do this. And those pledges are in the program. I'm assuming most of the people on the call have seen this already, agreeing to do those. And part of that is having staff wear a mask. I have worked in a restaurant. I know it's no fun to wear a mask, whether you're in the kitchen or whether you're out in the dining area. It's not the most fun thing in the world to do, but we've all had to do things in certain jobs, wear things in our careers. And that's just sort of where we are today and what it is. But again, the governor would much rather be mandated or not be mandated by the state and be sort of industry born. Now, I realize in the course of that time, in the last couple of days, that some municipalities have come out with their own individual mask requirements, and that's fine. They're certainly allowed to do that. There's nothing, I think the Attorney General ruled this morning that was constitutional, that they could do that and require masks. Obviously, restaurants, bars are a little different because, again, as I mentioned before, you have to take the mask off to eat or drink. But nonetheless, certainly from a staff standpoint, you know, I think it's imperative, and if you're a smart operator, you likely wouldn't be on this call. And so if you're a smart operator, you want to sort of show to your guests, you always want to have that cleanliness factor even before COVID came. This is an opportunity to show how much you care about it, even more so in regard to new protocols and new things that are in place. And that's what the Palmetto Priority became about. So with the assistance of DHEC, the South Carolina Restaurant Lodging Association came up with that pledge. And then that's essentially what's born out of that. One of the great things about this is you don't have to be a member of the association. So we want all restaurants to sign up for this. There's not a cost involved with it. And I know Douglas may talk some more in detail about it later, but the short version of the story is I know as a tourism person how important food and restaurants are to our visitors. We are known for food. The unique foods we have in our state is why we created the South Carolina Chef Ambassador Program. It's now in its 6th year. We've been through, I believe, 25 different chefs now that we have represented the state in some way, shape, or form throughout the country and even in Europe about food in South Carolina. I know it's important to people, but I want people who come to our state to also not only want to eat boiled peanuts, shrimp, and grits and pimento cheese, but also want them to feel safe doing it. And so I think that's where this opportunity comes in for Palmetto Priority, to be able to walk in with that, that sort of confidence in your mind. You see this window decal, window cling, if you will. You're able to use the QR code or the website to look up more information about it as a patron and find out those sort of things that are important to you and say, yes, I feel comfortable eating here. So I encourage everyone here to sort of take the time. Yes, there's a little bit of training that I think Douglas will go into and a little bit of But again, it's well worth the investment, I think, for consumers to be able to go to. You know, as you probably read, some states are beating up South Carolina and some other states in the South that have had number of cases rises. Well, this is a way to sort of combat that somewhat. So when people do come, they feel safe to come in and eat at those places. So I know how important food is. We've created the barbecue trail around it. We created the Satisfy Your Thirst trail around food and beverage. It's a big part of why people come to our state. It's one of the top 5 reasons people travel now is because of food. And so we just want to try to protect that image and make people feel safe as possible. With Douglas, that concludes what I've got to say, pending any questions someone may have.
Well, I'm looking at the questions and answers, and there are a few questions in there, but none of them are directed specifically to you, and most of them will be answered as we get through the webinar itself. So, Dwayne, I know your time is limited with us. Any final thoughts?
No, I just want to say thank you to everyone at DHEC. I mean, Myra Reese and Sandra Craig in particular, but also yourself and John and your staff at SCRLA, Bobby Williams, and everyone else who's helped put this together pretty quickly, because I do think it's important going forward. And thank you for your time. Great.
Thank you, Dwayne. We'll go ahead and just keep moving on with the webinar itself. I know everyone's time is valuable. At this time, just to reiterate what Dwayne was talking about, is that this is just a formal commitment made by restaurateurs to provide a clean and safe environment. It is a volunteer program. It is not mandated, and it is optional whether restaurants choose to participate or not. So we'll get into the thick of things here. There are 3 standards. There's program standards, and of course there's a lot of variables in these standards, but there's 3 main standards that we're asking restaurateurs to comply with. First and foremost is to complete either a DHEC virtual food safety check, or after July, a limited scope food safety inspection. Secondly, managers must complete the Serve Safe Reopening Guidance COVID-19 precautions training. And then lastly, adhere to the minimum standards as outlined in the restaurant reopening guidance. And we'll go through all of those individually. To get started, we'll start with complete the DHEC virtual food safety check. And on the webinar today, we've asked Sandra Craig with DHEC, the Director of Division of Food and Lead Risk Assessments, to be with us today to go through those virtual safety checks. We know we've got a lot of restaurants out there that have already completed them. Those were implemented months ago, but there are still a lot of restaurants that have not completed their food safety check. So Sandra, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Douglas. Hello, everybody. Glad to be talking to you today and to explain these 2 programs to you. It all started with the start of everybody being restricted to staying at home, but yet DHEC was still open. We were still an essential service, and there were things that we needed to be able to provide for folks. So it actually started as a pre-operational inspection for a facility that needed a permit. And the gentleman you see on the screen there, that's Nathan Helzer. He's one of our food team leaders in the Columbia office. He got a call from a contractor that needed to get a permit, and we weren't able to go out in the field and do the inspection to issue his permit. So they came up with the idea of doing a virtual inspection using FaceTime. We tried it out as a pilot. We came up with some SOPs and some standards after we did this first one. But basically, we experimented and it worked great. We found that we were able to have that person go around, show us the things we needed to see, talk about the stuff we needed to talk about during that inspection, and we were able to issue his permit based on that virtual inspection. You know, we had a disclaimer that said if we missed something, when we go back out and do the first real, on-site inspection, we can pick it up, and we came up with a method for signing. So that was what got us started. And then we kind of said, okay, well, we've done a permit one. Let's come up with an idea that will let us do some food safety checks as well, because we were already starting to get questions about, are you going out and looking at these restaurants that are doing takeout? Because at that time, everybody was limited to just takeout. So we, again, piloted with a few couple of places, try it out. Can we do a limited inspection where we look at our critical risk factors, the things like temperatures, holding temperatures, cooking temperatures. And we also wanted to discuss at that time some of the limitations that were being caused by COVID-19. Some of the, are you just doing takeout? How's this affecting your operation? What are you doing to socially distance your employees? Gave us a chance to talk about those things too that aren't part of our food regulation. So we developed what we called the food safety check, and that's what we are currently doing. They are done either preferably by video. There are a few people that don't have the capability to do that we have done them by phone, but we do them by video. And it gives us the opportunity through these video conferencing platforms that we can use to have you go around and show us the things that we need to see so we can complete an inspection. We have been every day we have a list of the places that have had them done on our website. Not only do we have the list, but we use an electronic inspection form. Those of you that have facilities know what our routine ones look like. This is a different looking form, but it's still the same system. We complete the form, it gets emailed back to you, you have a copy of it, we have a copy of it, and it's been posted on Food Grades, so the public can see it as well. Now the food safety checks were non-graded. There was no grade at all. It was just you completed it. And we're now, as this pandemic has gone longer than I think any of us expected, we felt like it was time to step up the game a little bit. So starting July 1st, we're going to discontinue doing the food safety checks, and we're instead going to replace it with what we're calling a limited scope inspection. We're still basically going to be concentrating on those critical risk factors, the things that are most likely to make people sick. But we will also ask a few questions that are related to the restaurant guidance, like is all the staff wearing a face covering or face shield? Are the tables properly spaced out? Some of the things that are in the guidance. But we're going to do these they're still not going to be graded. It's not going to, your A or whatever grade is posted on your door right now will remain there. And instead, we're just going to do these on a pass-fail basis. So, and again, we'll do exactly what we've been doing on the food safety checks, which is basically we are getting you to correct things as we do the inspection. And if you do that, then you will pass. If there's something that for some reason you are unable to correct, say all your refrigeration's down, then obviously, that's going to affect it. And we're going to come back and do a follow-up just like we would if it was a regular routine inspection. We will do follow-ups on these. We've been doing them on the food safety checks. So it's basically, again, a good way for us to be able to interact on the important food safety items, provide the consumer that confidence that, yes, there is still oversight, and yet it limits us keeps us from having to be an additional factor in going out another person in your facility. The whole idea of social distancing is for us to stay away as much as we can and do as much as we can virtually. To date, we've done over 4,000 food safety checks. So a lot of people have taken advantage of this already. And another thing I just wanted to mention, we don't want to be what holds people up from getting their seal, their sticker. So when you call to schedule a food safety check or after July 1st, a limited scope inspection, if you can be ready to do the inspection right there, in other words, you've got FaceTime on your phone or one of our other platforms that are detailed on our website, we can, if we've got an inspector available at that moment, we'll do the inspection when you call, right then on the phone. We'll hop on it. If not, we'll schedule it as quickly as we can get our technology, the two of us can get our technology together, because that's really the main holdup is I don't have this on my phone. I've got to download that, you know, just getting the technology. But our feedback that we've gotten from industry has been very positive, since these are very educationally focused. And we feel like what we're getting back is we're seeing from you that this is helping you to learn how to do better active managerial control. And it has been, I think, an extremely positive step forward for both you, the restaurant industry, and us, the regulatory industry, to see that there's a different way to look at inspections. And, you know, the routine inspection's still going to be out there. It's never going to go away. But I think this is a good way to assist people with compliance, maybe between those routine inspections even. So again, good things can come out of bad. And if there's anything good that comes out of COVID-19, it might be these virtual inspections. So that's my spiel for the day. Douglas?
Yep, Sandra, thank you so much. We've got a few questions in the chat box here. I'm going to read those to you. One of them says, I had a phone call with the DHEC officials when we were reopening, and this was first for outdoor dining in May. Was this considered a virtual food safety check?
Probably was, if they completed the form. And the best way for you to tell is to go and check that list that we have posted on our website. It really depends on how detailed that phone call got to be, because we were doing, some of those phone checks were detailed enough that they are actually food safety checks. We did the form with you, the report.
Sounds great. And then of course, y'all, the address to be able to schedule a food safety check, contact your DHEC regional office. There is also a web address on the screen here that you will be able to go to. But really, if you just Google DHEC, DHEC food safety check, it will take you right to that page with the food safety checks. And then if you want to take a look for food grades, you'll be able to look on the food grade page, and that's where you'll find that listing. We have another question here, and it's asked if we will get a copy of the limited scope inspection checklist. And Sandra, if I'm not mistaken, that's just the regular inspection checklist. Is that correct?
No, actually, it will be a different form. It will look a lot like the food safety check form that is currently posted on the website, but I got to be quite honest with y'all, it's under development. It'll be ready by July 1st, and we will have it posted on our website before July 1st, but it takes us a little while to manipulate these forms in our electronic system, and we've got to get the questions to work and the buttons to work. You know, when our inspector clicks a button, it's got to do the right thing. So my staff is working feverishly to get that ready, and it will be ready prior to starting to do them.
And then another question comes in here that if they volunteer for this and they fail, is it a public record that they failed? Or would that just still be private?
My plan, I think it's going to be private, because what we will do is we will immediately schedule a follow-up with you so you can pass on the next one.
Okay. So almost like a regular inspection then.
Yes. You know, and again, we're going to do our, if we can work through the problem while we're there, and most of the time, everything can be corrected while we're there. It's only going to be something big like no refrigeration, and multiple ones. It's not going to be just one. You know, you'd have to have a couple of critical risk items out before you would fail.
And then one last question here is, how often will these routine checks be done? Is it only once, or will there be follow-up, or will there be a schedule?
Again, right now we're going to try to get to, we've got 22,000 retail food service establishments in the state of South Carolina, and so far we've done 4,000. So I've got a few more to do before we start circling back around to everybody. But yeah, if this continues on to where we can't, you know, do our regular routine inspections, then we would we'll circle back around with another round of limited scope inspections.
Yep. Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on, Sandra, if you don't mind, stay on just in case we have a couple more questions as relates to DHEC, but I will answer a couple more questions that were on the chat box that came in live, and it asks for what is the web address. If you are calling in on your phone and you actually are not participating in the webinar via screen, you're not seeing the web address, and so I apologize there. But I will tell you, if you just go to any search engine and you type in DHEC food safety virtual food safety inspections, it's going to be the very first thing that pops up. They've done a great job in updating their website. You can also go to scdhec.gov and then follow the links for food safety, and you'll find the links that are there. But Sandra, thanks again for your time. We'll continue to move on. The next section of the program standards that we have is that the manager must complete the Serve Safe Reopening Guidance precaution checklist. And this is all managers. And so depending on how you define managers, whether they're a key holder, a manager, a supervisor, or anything, I will tell you that the training is free. I would encourage you to watch the training. It's 13 minutes long. It will give you some insight on the COVID-19, how it pertains to restaurants. It is an excellent way for professional development. If possible, have all of your employees take the course. They can take them right there on your phone or a pad, or take them at home whenever they want. At the end of the course, you'll answer some questions as you go through. The questions are not test questions. They are really questions to check your knowledge, to make sure that you were paying attention and not just listening to the recording in the background. And as you go through the training, you'll receive a certificate of completion at the end. Download that certificate. We encourage you to print the certificate and either post that in the back of the house by your office, or possibly, even if your restaurant style permits it, to post it out front so your guests know that you've taken some additional training as it relates to that. There is, again, no cost to do that. The website to do that training is on the screen. It's servesafe.com/free-courses. There are 3 courses available for free. You're only required to take the Serve Safe Reopening Guidance. The other 2 courses are as it relates to delivery and as it relates to takeout. We highly encourage you to watch those videos if you're doing delivery or takeout at your establishment. Moving on a little bit, the next set is to adhere to the minimum standards as outlined in the restaurant reopening guidelines. And so we'll go through those real quick. I will not read the entire screen to you, but I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to put them on the screen. If you've not visited the palmettopriority.com website, they are all listed there. They're very easy to read and clear and concise. If there is a hyperlink associated with the training or downloading a sign or something of that nature, please look for the bold underlined statements, and those will lead to a hyperlink and help you with additional information there. To kind of go through some of the specifics there, instead of reading that entire checklist with you, I wanted to talk to you about signage. DHEC has done an excellent job in designing signage specifically for this, and there is one sign that covers all of your DHEC responsibilities as it relates to signage and posting the signage to comply with this program. It's one sign. It says, "Don't enter if you're symptomatic, wash your hands, and social distance." And that's really what we're looking for. It's not our job to educate the public. It's our job to work hand in hand with the public. And if we have an opportunity to educate them on how we can minimize the spread of the COVID-19, this is definitely an opportunity. The other side of that sign is it can go on your front door. It can go by your cash register. It can go in any of your back doors for your employees to see as well. And so you can post that signage. You can actually download it from the DHEC website. It is hyperlinked from the website, and able to download it, print it. It's 8.5 by 11 full color. And it's a good looking sign. So it's something that you can have up there. Health safety checks, to perform health safety checks on all of your employees. And there's a variety of ways. There's apps out there that you can use. You can use text messaging. You can use telephone calls. If you need to do it when they enter the restaurant, you can do it as they're entering the restaurant. And what that is asking a series of questions. You know, have you been around anybody with COVID? Had you experiencing any symptoms? What is your temperature? You know, those kinds of things. If you want to take their temperature, you can. but conducting a health safety check is very important to be able to do that and communicate and talk with your employees. Next is having a safety ambassador, and it's not really worded on a website that way. I like to put safety ambassador there because I think folks better understand what that means. And what that means is assigning a person that's going to be in charge of the safety and making sure that there's compliance across the board. Depending on the size of your facility will depend on whether you need one safety ambassador or two or multiples, whether you need one for front of the house and back of the house, or whether you just need one. It really depends on your size. And what that person does is it monitors the safety actions. And it also empowers your employees to take charge and better understand the importance of making sure that you follow these safety protocols to help minimize the spread of the COVID virus. Next is a popular topic, that is face coverings. We learned today that the ADA has defined, and they don't like to use the word mask anymore. They want to use face coverings. And so you'll start to see everyone shifting the way that the words they're using face coverings. And those face coverings, we prefer to use as a cloth face covering. It can be something that's made. It could be something that you purchased. It could be something like a scarf or anything, whatever is most comfortable for your employees to wear. The idea of the face covering is because that is what is going to help protect your guests and your other employees. Meaning, if I wear my mask and my face covering, excuse me, I'm still learning to ship my words. If I wear my face covering, it's going to protect the person that I'm with. So, and if they wear a face covering, it protects me. And so I'm doing my job to protect them, and they need to do their job when they protect them. As Dwayne mentioned early on, this is not a comfortable topic. A lot of people have misconceptions about what the face coverings do. Does it diminish more? Does it really work? Does it not work? It's something. It's more than nothing. And that's really important. It's kind of like the difference, and the question is whether we use gloves or whether we wash our hands more often. And in the restaurant industry, that's a good analogy to use. The other side is it's not the general air, it's the droplets that come from your mouth. And so that face covering prevents those droplets from actually going out into the air or possibly endangering other people by going onto a surface and having someone touch the surface, or God forbid, going straight into the other person's mouth or eye or what have you. I know it sounds kind of gross and disgusting to talk about, but that is the truth. And that's the reason those face coverings are there. Now, when do face coverings need to be worn? They need to be worn anytime that social distancing is not allowed or cannot be handled. So that means if you have one person in the kitchen and they're opening the restaurant and they're getting everything together, they do not need to wear a face mask. The face mask is not to protect the food. It is to protect person to person. And so if that one person's in the kitchen, they don't need to wear a face mask. Now, if they're joined by another person in the kitchen or another person that's coming into the kitchen, then they need to have face coverings, provided they're not social distancing. So again, I'll use another example. Somebody's setting up in the morning and they're setting up the dining room, and then you have a cook in the kitchen and they're starting to set up the line in the kitchen. Cook's in the kitchen, person's in the dining room. That's social distancing. They're not interacting together. Again, they don't need face coverings. 2 or 3 cooks in the kitchen, 2 or 3 people in the dining room setting up that are interacting and walking back and forth and have the possibility not to social distance, then they need a face covering. It comes the same thing when it comes to businesses that might have a drive-through. So you have 4 or 5 employees in the facility, you're only doing takeout and drive-through. Well, if there's 4 or 5 employees and they're not standing 6 feet apart and they don't have their spaces, then you need face coverings, because you need to make sure that you're protecting all of your employees when you do that. You know, it's not necessarily only when you take food to the window or you deliver food to a car. It is really anytime 2 people are together. Now, the only time that that doesn't apply is, of course, with family, because you're living in a house together and you're having family together, and you're not certainly wearing your face coverings at home by yourself or with family members. And so try not to split hairs too much on the face coverings. We've had a lot of calls, a lot of questions. You know, if you're working in a kitchen, it's hot. I get it. If you have working in a kitchen, it's hot. You have a lot of people, face coverings are required. You're going to have to adjust your business model, and you're going to have to make sure that those employees have times to take breaks so they can take their face covering off. They can go to the break room, or they can go out back and they can sit outside for a minute by themselves, not with 6 other employees, and take their mask off. They have to have that time to be able to do that. So those are just business decisions you're going to have to make when it comes to face coverings. Social distance and table coverings.
Douglas,
Yes, sir.
Just one thing with regard to face coverings. You mentioned the kitchen. Full face shields are acceptable in the kitchen and encouraged.
Which does help with breathing. And so it does, not that they're any more comfortable, but you're right, John, that does help. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And then social distancing and table arrangements, that's really for your guests. So again, 6 feet, you know, make sure your table arrangements are around. It really depends on the way the chairs are, the way your guests are sitting. You want to make sure you put 6 feet between any guest that is not dining together, that didn't come in together. So if I went to a restaurant and I'm sitting at a table and somebody else is coming in to join me at my table, certainly we don't need to be 6 feet apart. We're choosing to dine together. However, the other party at the table next to me, I don't know who they are. I didn't choose to dine with them. I chose to come out to a restaurant because I wanted to enjoy your wonderful restaurant. I didn't come out to dine with other people sitting that close to me. So they need to be 6 feet away from me. And so that might be 6 feet table to table. That might be 6 feet chair to chair. That might be 8 feet table to table. It just really depends on your layout. We do allow for booths to have barriers built to provide booths. So you're almost making like a little room in that booth. And so you've got to make sure that that barrier, whether that be plexiglass or wood or any other solid surface of some sort, is high enough. But it also, remember, it needs to come out into the aisleway a little bit to where the 2 guests that are back to back in a booth are not really close. So they're not exchanging the same air. So you want to make sure that you have a barrier of some sort on the booths. It's really tricky on the booths. So maybe you might want to be a little extra cautious on that. And then the other side is you may also want to outfit a couple booths to see how your guests feel. Some of them may not want to sit in the booth to feel like they're in like a little special room that's there. Others may like it. So you may want to try that as it relates to that. Social distancing in the front, whether that be at the hostess stand or whether that be at a bar while they're waiting on the table or something of that nature, it's just arranging your guests and making sure that you remind them that they need to social distance. And so that could be made with marks, that could ask people to sit into their cars and you'll send them a text message and be able to do that. The hair salons to do that very well. If you've got your hair cut in the past couple of weeks and the hair salons are open, they don't allow anybody in their establishment. Everyone has to wait outside and everyone has to be let in. And so it's the same opportunity. It's just different for our restaurant industry because it is that. It's just different. We're so hospitable and we want to take care of everybody and we want everyone to be happy. Unfortunately, we have to make sure that we make those right decisions when it comes to social distancing. Cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. The only thing I'll say here is that we have been doing this for our entire life. That's all we do in the restaurant industry. It's clean, sanitize, and disinfect. You know, it's like wash, rinse, and sanitize in the 3-compartment sink. We all understand and know where it's at, so I'm not going to go into a lot of great detail there. I will say, make sure that you're using the right product, and it's always important to make sure that you go above and beyond to make sure you are showing the customers that you are cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting the items such as tables, chairs, so on and so forth. High surface, high touch items, you can't wipe down enough. You cannot wipe down that front door enough. You can't wipe down counters enough. You can't write down where the bathroom door, so on and so forth. So make sure you've got a process in place there. And then last on the list here, we're going to talk a little bit about buffets and self-service. So buffets and self-service, we recommend that buffets be more cafeteria style. DHEC has allowed and have seen some very creative buffet restaurants actually be able to do buffets with very strict guidance and very strict overview, only allowing one person at the buffet at a time, making sure the buffet, someone has gloves on while they use the buffet, the gloves are disposed of before they go back to their seat. And so it gives them the opportunity to do that. So buffets are allowed. You can have a buffet, but the self-service component of it, you're running a very, very high risk. In order to participate in this program, you've got to make sure that you have procedures to where that's done cafeteria style or you have a program in place. I will tell you that DHEC has been instrumental in helping a lot of buffet restaurants be creative and design procedures that are there. So I would encourage you to maybe to reach out to your DHEC regional office, speak with an inspector, and maybe see if they can help you with some guidance to be able to do that, because we know that it is impossible to outfit and upfit a buffet restaurant to be able to change service immediately. And so there are some opportunities there. Self-service, that is just like a Coke machine, a tea machine, lemonade, all those kinds of things. If they have self-service, it could also mean that, you know, lemons that go into a tea that you might have, those kinds of things. Again, either change that to where it's cafeteria style, to where you have someone serving it, or make sure that you have a plan in place to make sure that it remains clean and sanitized the entire time. We love our self-service drink stations, especially at quick service restaurants, but they might not be the cleanest place for our customers to visit. And so we've got to make sure that we have plans when it comes to those kinds of things. Susan, Lenza, are there any questions as it relates to this section before I move to the next?
Yes.
Yeah, Douglas. Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, I was going to say there's a couple questions about, can people be reported for seating large groups together who claim to be immediate family members?
So we're not asking for people's IDs. So if they say that they're all for the family, then they're all with the family. It's a large group. I mean, we certainly know that people are not going to be very honest with us when it comes to that. You may have a policy for your restaurant, just to make your restaurant as safe as possible, to limit the number of people at a table. We recommend no more than 8, but we certainly understand, especially in high tourist areas, you've got a group of people that come from the Midwest that rented a house on the beach, and you know, they've put 16 people in this house. Well, they're living in the same house already, and they're interacting closely with each other already. So why couldn't they eat together? And so when they say that's one family, it's one household. That's why we say one household that way. It is done and defined that way. So there's no policing when it comes to that.
All right, Douglas, we got a question here about how high should the barrier be?
You know, it really depends on the booth itself, and it depends on the ceiling height. As high as possible, it would be the best answer for that. But it needs to be taller than somebody who's standing at the booth. So if somebody is standing at the booth, like a server, or somebody comes in and talks to the table, or somebody gets up from the table and they're standing there talking, it needs to be higher than the person standing there. So, you know, 6 feet or so higher than that. Okay. So it really depends on the booth itself.
And we've got, I'm sorry, we had a good question about a gas station with food services. How would you regulate self-service, you know, beverage items and things like that at the gas station?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's probably one that I would probably say reach out to the Convenience Store or Petroleum Marketers Association to find out some guidance on that. I personally used to go to a gas station and get coffee, and I don't anymore, just because I don't know when it's been cleaned last or if it's been sanitized or not. And those self-service stations scare me a little bit, and I know it scares a lot of folks too. I mean, unless there is protocols in place, then that's something that I'd probably refer to the Petroleum Marketers of the Convenience Store Association.
We've got another question about table tents and salt and pepper shakers on the table.
Yeah, so we have asked to remove all items that are high touch, high contact areas. You know, table tents, I mean, someone's going to pick it up. If they pick it up, you know, they hold it to their, you know, and spit on it, not purposely spit on it, but as they're talking, you know, particles get on it. That's available for the next person that's coming. So unless they're cleaned and sanitized every single time that the table is done, you're running a risk. So we recommend that you remove all items from the top of the table.
Okay, we've got another question in the chat box. What do we do about at bar businesses where people are walking around and socializing with one another?
Again, it's the social distancing aspect of it. That's something that as it's your responsibility as the business owner and as the manager to be able to social distance. Bars and nightclubs are not open yet, and part of the reason they're not open yet is because of that very reason. Is because it's going to be too hard to social distance. I mean, people need to to understand that it's their responsibility. Now, if you know, somebody gets up because they see their mom across the room and they want to go sit and talk to their mom, but they need to go and sit with their mom and sit at that table. They don't need to be standing at the bar chatting with somebody to do that, because they're just going to go back. And if they're not wearing masks because they're eating or drinking, they have the opportunity to continue to spread the virus.
Okay, and we have one more question about cloth tables. Is it okay to leave rolled silverware on the table? It's
preferably not. Again, the guidance requests that there be no item left on the table from one diner to the next, and so to be able to remove that. You know, if you know, the person that busses the table cleans and sanitizes and resets the table and sets it because the hostess is bringing somebody to it, then that's not a problem. But it's like having that rolled silverware on that table, not knowing the next time it's going to be seated, that presents a problem. Okay. All right, so part of the program is also recognition. And so once a restaurant has committed to following those guidelines, they've completed their virtual food safety check or limited scope inspection, and they've verified that they've done the training. And I'll remind you that we do not need a copy of your certificate. That's done on the honor system. So if you've done it, check the box and say you've done it. We trust you. There's no point in emailing or mailing in a certificate. That just seems cumbersome, and we can run with the honor system itself. And so this recognition that we're providing will provide you with the Palmetto Priority seal. It's a window cling. Each restaurant will get 2 window clings. If you need more, you'll need to request more. After you've received your window cling, please don't send those in right now, because we're a little inundated right now with applications. You'll get a certificate. It'll be a personalized certificate that you'll be able to hang into the restaurant. You can frame or post in the window, however you wish to display your certificate. You'll receive an email with digital icons and images to promote your participation on your website, social media, etc. You'll be listed on the palmettopriority.com website as a participating restaurant, and then additional promotion that's provided by Discover SC, which is the South Carolina Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. And so we're really excited about this recognition. I know the governor said sticker, and you know, personalities are personalities. We'd like to call it a seal, but it is what it is. It's still a sticker. There is some oversight. I want to tell you a little bit about this oversight. This is probably the one part that's given everyone the most heartburn, is having customers provide feedback. And that's the one thing that I chuckle a little bit when I get that, because there are so many sites out there. We all sign up for our restaurant Facebook page to allow people to rate our restaurants and to provide comments publicly. We all make sure that our restaurants are listed on Yelp and TripAdvisor, both places that people can rate our businesses and provide comments. So one of the things that we did with the oversight was to be able to provide a form that guests can then provide their feedback, both good and bad, to the association, so we have an opportunity to monitor. A lot of the pledges that are out there have no monitoring facts. So once you say, oh yeah, I'll pledge, I'll do that, give me my sticker, they put it in the sticker, and then nobody comes back to make sure that they're doing it. This program itself does have that oversight component to that, and we're asking the customers to tell us how you're doing. And so we encourage you to tell your customers, especially the ones that are happy and they are glad you're part of this program, and they come in and say, I'm coming because I saw that you had the decal and that you had the seal on your window. Tell them, scan the QR code, go in there and provide some positive feedback. We are working on some platform as part of phase 2 to be able to reward restaurants with positive feedback. So the more positive feedback you get, the more rewards you might get. What that looks like yet is still to be determined, because that'll be in phase 2. But it is also an opportunity that somebody can report that, you know, perhaps maybe the servers didn't have masks on, or perhaps maybe there wasn't social distancing, perhaps maybe that the restaurant was packed and crowded, those kinds of things. And this gives them the opportunity to be able to do so. And they'll do that with the feedback form on the palmettopriority.com website. There is no opportunity for them to upload a photo. We don't need proof or any of those kinds of things, because what we're going to do is be very professional about it. We'll reach out to our partners who have decided to this commitment, and we will talk to them. What happened? Such and such called, such and such said, or excuse me, not called, such and such provided an online feedback, and they said this was the issue, and then we're going to have a conversation with you. And if it's about somebody not wearing a mask, it's as simple as that. This person is not eligible to wear a mask. They have a medical condition, they can't wear a mask. Or they did have a mask on, and maybe they took it off to take a break, and they were just walking somewhere to take a break. No harm, no foul, and no opportunity to do that. And so it is something that the industry can provide some oversight when doing that. We have developed a process, and the governor called it the 3-strike program. Well, technically there's 4. And what that is the first time that we do get a negative feedback, we would then call and have a conversation, and that would just be no penalty whatsoever. It's, you know, everyone has an issue. Everyone has a possibility of having an issue when it comes to that, and no harm, no foul. We'll have a conversation, not a big deal. If it was a valid complaint and a valid problem, it'll just be documented and then moved on. If we get another one, we'll do the same thing. We'll call, send an email, we'll find a time to communicate, and we'll be able to talk with you and then be able to provide any educational resources based upon the situation. The next time that happens again, the same situation. We call, we talk, we have a conversation. Perhaps now at this point, we find another operator with a similar restaurant that might be able to offer some peer-to-peer suggestions, because at this point, if it's happened 3 times already, then it's become repetitive, and maybe there might be some guidance that another operator might be having some success with that particular issue. And what those issues look like, we're not sure, but we have to wait and evaluate them time after time. And if it happens again and it's repetitive and it's disregarded and it keeps coming in, then unfortunately we'll have no other choice than to ask you to remove the Palmetto Priority seal, return the certificate and the seal back to the office, and then you'll just be removed off of the website. There'll be no media release, there'll be no press coverage. We're not going to, you know, send an army of people to rip the sticker off the front of your restaurant. And by that time, after we've had 4 conversations with you about the same issue, then at that point, there might be the better idea to say, look, this is not the right program for me. Let me find a different pledge. Let me find a different program. Let me find something that I fit better with. Again, because again, this is voluntary. It's better to have, as Dwayne mentioned, it's better to have the industry oversee the program, to be able to have conversations with restaurants, to be able to set up peer-to-peer conversations with other restaurants that are experiencing some of the same issues or some of the same ideas, or maybe having some successes, to be able to do that, rather than a government agency to do that. There have been some misconceptions about this is going to affect my food grade, or they're going to take my sticker and they're going to take this away, or DHEC has already given me my sticker. I have the sticker that I need. You're absolutely right. If you have a retail food service permit and you have a grade A on your door, you are good to go. You do not need this sticker. This is 100% voluntary. This is only for the restaurants who want to go above and beyond just a grade of an A, and to be able to commit to the possibility of slowing the spread of COVID in their business. The other side is it's also for the restaurants that actually want to protect their employees, so their employees are safe as well. I know at least 5 restaurateurs I've talked to in the last day and a half that have closed their business because they don't have enough employees, because all of their employees have tested, not all, a lot of their employees have tested positive, and they don't have enough staff to be able to man their restaurants. And part of that is because of some of the things that we put into this program to help mitigate those circumstances. And so there is a lot of positive things that come along with this itself. And then another point that we've got a lot of questions with is, how does this flow work? I've submitted my application. And so Lenza, if you can you launch that poll? We're just going to do a real quick poll of how many people are on the line that have actually submitted their application already, just out of curiosity.
Douglas, you actually have to launch the poll as the host.
Oh, I do? Okay,
Yeah.
Here we go. Launch. There we go. So if you can, if you're watching this online, please click just yes or no if you have. This just gives us an idea. I'll share the results in about 15 seconds. Or longer. That number keeps rising, so I'm just watching it go. I don't want to stop it. It looks like we're slowing down a little bit. So yeah, we'll go ahead and end the poll, share results. There we are. We have 58 folks that have submitted their applications and 179 who have not so far. So Susan, who accepts our applications here, look forward to getting another 179 in real quick. But I did want to share how we will manage that. As the application process happens, we will review the application to verify that all the information has been met. I will tell you, make sure that you fill in the boxes and make sure that your email address is correct, because that is our only form of communication with you. We will review to make sure everything's good. Once we have reviewed it, you will get a confirmation email to let you know that your application has been approved, or if we need some additional information. For example, if we can't find your virtual food safety check, one of the things that we're running into is that your business may have registered for a virtual food safety check as Bob's Burgers, and but online it's Robert's Burgers with DHEC. And I know it's a bad example, but it gives you an idea that sometimes they don't necessarily always match. And so we may have to reach out to you and say, do you have it listed under your corporate name or you're doing business as name? And that also falls in line as well with some of the chains or some of the franchisees that are out there that run multiple businesses. They may be listed under their franchisee name, but yet, or their LLC name and not their franchisee name. And we've got to match those up in doing that. So if we do send you an email, if you can, please be on the lookout for that. Let us know, and we will take it from there. Once everything has been met, we will award, and we will mail the door decal, your personalized certificate, and any other information as it relates to the compliance of the program. And like I mentioned about the overview and review, we will continue to monitor those standards and be able to do that. I will tell you that any feedback form that comes in, you are privy to. So if somebody sends a feedback form about your restaurant and we make a call and said, hey, you know what, we got a feedback form and this is what it says, we'll be happy to share that feedback form with you if you want to see it. So we're working on some procedures now on exactly how we're going to do that. But this is not something that we're holding anything secret. This is a partnership between your restaurant and our association to be able to really promote and market the restaurants who are helping mitigate the spread of COVID-19 by committing to the program itself. And so that's really some good information. Before I move on, any questions so far, Susan, Lenza, in the chat box?
Yeah, Douglas, I do have a couple questions about the drink machines. Mm-hmm. Again, if they have a self-serve beverage station, would a cleaning checkoff sheet similar to one used for bathroom cleaning suffice? Is every 15 minutes acceptable to clean it, or do we need to clean after each guest every time?
So it just really depends on how busy you are. I mean, every 15 minutes, may seem like very cumbersome, but during lunch hour and you've got 300-400 guests coming through at lunch hour, then every 15 minutes may not be enough time. Maybe during those high peak hours that you may want to staff somebody to be out there to constantly wipe things down back and forth. And then during the off peak hours, then do that. The one side of that I'll point out for that is it is guest perception. You want to make sure that your guests have the perception that they feel comfortable and safe in doing that, because if they don't, then they're going to submit that form and then we're going to have a conversation. And at that point, that might be a good point to maybe reevaluate your plan as it comes to those self-serve drinking stations.
Douglas, can I jump in on this one too?
Yes, ma'am, please.
I think if you're a really busy place with a beverage self-service, you may even want to have an employee just be there to monitor, like you would a buffet. Or you could provide the guest with gloves, like some of the buffets are doing, so that they wouldn't actually be touching those surfaces. So there's lots of ways to approach it. But, as long as you're addressing it in some manner, I think you're meeting the guidance.
And Sandra, I actually have another question for you about glove recommendations. There is a person in the chat box that said their DHEC representative said it is more dangerous to have front of house staff wear gloves. Can you talk a little bit more about gloves in your recommendations?
Well, then, and I will codify that remark with gloves not properly worn. And that's the problem we run into. And y'all do too. You know this as food service managers. People put on a pair of gloves and they think they got armor on. The gloves going to protect them from everything and everybody, and they kind of forget about the fact that once you touch something with that glove and then you touch something else, you're recontaminating everything. So it's proper glove usage that we need to have. And there's really no need to wear gloves if you're not touching raw or ready to eat foods. Unless you're doing the dispense, you're the person handling the utensils or things at a buffet bar, you may want that person to wear gloves. But gloves if they're worn, need to be worn properly. We've got some guidance out there in the toolkit. We've got a nice poster. We're getting some good stickers that we're at the print shop waiting on still, but will be available soon. But it really boils down to, if they're going to wear gloves, make sure they do it right.
Sandra, this is John. Just one other thing I'd like to get you to comment on, please, going back to another subject. And by the way, I want to really commend you and your colleagues at your agency for using reasonableness in making sure that these guidelines are followed. And in that spirit, and we've talked about this before, but I want to be sure everyone understood, if y'all are doing your inspection and there is a person, a server, that is not wearing a face mask, that is not an automatic fail mark.
Correct. Even if nobody's wearing, that will not fail you on, it's an observation for us. It would not be a pass-fail issue on the limited scope food inspections, because it's not required under our regulation of 61-25. So we would make the observation that nobody was wearing face mask, or again, if you've got one person in there that for whatever reason forgot to put it on or medically is not able or whatever with their face covering, we would make that recommendation that that person that medically is not able to wear one instead be fitted, get a face shield, because everybody, asthmatic people and anybody, can wear the face shields. They will not impede the airflow. So
great. Thank you very much.
Douglas, I do have a question about the strikes. If each issue is different, so say they get 3 strikes, but all of them are different issues, does this count towards them losing their pledge sticker?
No, like one, for example, would be social distancing. The next one would be wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, but again, that is really subjective based upon the feedback and the communication back and forth, making sure that we have a good partnership there. So I would like to say no. And at that point, we realize that there are the possibility to deal with erroneous complaints. One concern that I got a phone call, and it was a 15-minute phone call, someone saying that they had employees that were disgruntled because they didn't want to come back to work, and they were made to come back to work, that they're fearful that they're going to send in complaints. And I will tell you that we're going to monitor those very closely. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to reach out to you and say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about this? But if it is an erroneous complaint, it will not affect your priority seal whatsoever, because we realize those are there. I was talking to Sandra about it today. She gets those often on the DHEC website, where people will issue a food safety complaint that they're concerned about something. Every complaint has to be followed up on, but they find that many of them can be erroneous. And so we will evaluate those individually. So I will say one last thing on the mask, because it seems to be a hot button. You know, we're doing our best to follow CDC guidance. I'm certainly not an epidemiologist. I'm not an environmental. I'm not a PhD, and I'm not a doctor. But I do read and see and listen and attend a lot of webinars when it comes to that. And there is a lot of misinformation about the masks themselves. I would encourage you to go to the CDC website. Don't pay attention to Facebook. Don't watch people's videos on Facebook. I wouldn't even listen to somebody who claims to be a doctor on Facebook. You know, I would go to the CDC. I would go to DHEC. If you're really concerned about it, call your own personal doctor and talk to them about it when it comes to face coverings. But everything that I've seen, this is one opportunity that we have to be able to do that. I don't know when we're going to stop using face coverings, because I don't have a crystal ball on how this thing's going to work. But I will tell you that we weren't using them in the beginning, and things are only getting worse. Dr. Bell, in a conference call that she had today, said this is the worst ever, and it's only getting worse. And so we need to do things differently than what we've done them in the past to be able to do our part. It's not just our industry's responsibility, but I will tell you, we are the restaurant and lodging industry. We focus on our industry. We don't focus on other people's industries. If you have ideas about other industries, reach out to those industries, because that is something that needs to happen across the board. And if everyone takes a personal responsibility, we can definitely get through this and hopefully come out of this with a more vibrant restaurant industry than what we started. We'll answer a couple more questions, but it is 4:08, and we try to keep this to an hour.
I've got one more just about the social distancing in restaurants. Is the restaurant responsible for customers who do not social distance, even when asked to do so? Can you kind of elaborate on what they should do or how to handle that?
Absolutely. It's your business. It's your responsibility. If they don't want to comply with your rules in your business, then you have every right to ask them to leave. You know, you have every right to take it to the next level. I hope that it never escalates that far, but if they won't leave, you may have to call the law enforcement to ask them to leave to do that. But anybody who's choosing not to social distance, they're not wearing a mask, they're walking around, you have no idea if they are asymptomatic, carrying the virus, not carrying the virus, or what have you, and they're just infecting everybody in there. And so, you know, you have to look at everything from that prism and that perspective, especially if someone's disgruntled when it comes to that. You know, certainly ask them politely, you know, will you please stay in your seat? Will you please sit down? You know, we're obligated to do this. That is under the governor's executive order that we must social distance in businesses. And so that is one of those things that we have to follow.
Douglas, there's another question about the ADA and wearing masks legally. Okay, it says if a guest says they can't wear a mask because of medical reasons, then threatens ADA action, how much of this is covered by the ADA? Legally, you can ask what dog service is, but you cannot ask what the disability is.
So that's a great question. We've reached out because of the city ordinances in Greenville and Columbia. Beaufort County's looking at an ordinance, Richland County's looking at an ordinance, Horry County's looking at an ordinance. So asking that same question, I don't know the answer to you. I can speculate with you for a second and say, look, you've got to trust them. If they say that it's a dog that's protected or an animal that's protected under the ADA, you can't ask them a bunch of questions. I'd have to guess that's probably going to be the answer when it comes to face masks. But we are working on that. We will send out communication once we get an answer on that. So I'm sorry, I don't have the right answer for you, but I would speculate that you just have to allow them to come in.
And that goes into another question. If you ask a guest to leave and they accuse you of discrimination, how do you handle that kind of extreme situation?
Documentation. You know, it might even be something to where you may ask a server to record you politely asking that customer to leave, and to be able to make sure you maintain your documentation when it comes to that. Remember, discrimination is based upon, you know, age, race, sex, you know, gender, so on and so forth. So if you're not asking them to leave for that reason, you're asking them to leave because they're not complying with your rules. As long as you're not being discriminatory, you have every right to ask them to leave your building. But I will tell you, documentation, 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 and documentation, you know, and video is king. And it'd be very easy to pick up an iPhone and just ask a server saying, you know, I need you to record this. I'm going to go ask this gentleman to leave because he's not social distancing. Or, and look at me picking on men. Or ask this woman to leave because she's not social distancing. But, you know, I would document that and be able to record that. So if somebody does come back and say something, you have documentation, you have backup. It's no different as if you were asking somebody who was intoxicated, you know, to stop, and you're going to cut them off. You'll want to document all of those types of things. So same situation.
Linda, a question came through in the chat box about possibility of being able to review this webinar. And I know we mentioned something about that up front, but if you would please address that again. Thank you.
Yeah, so this webinar is currently being recorded. We will send it out after this is over via email, and it'll also be posted on our YouTube channel. So that'll be linked in the email that we send out post-webinar.
So I'll ask one more question, answer one more question on the mask, and then we do have to go. And I want to thank everybody for their time. But it says, what if an employee claims to have a disability and can't wear the mask? Then the answer to that question is that if they can't wear a mask, they can't wear a mask. But you need to make sure that you put them in a job that they can be social distance. So if they are a cook, you need to make sure that they can be in an area to where they're not near other people. They can certainly not wait tables. They can't bartend. They can't be a host because they're going to be interacting with guests. And so they'll need to be put into a job to where they cannot interact, where they can social distance, because at that point, because otherwise you're only putting them into harm's way and you're putting your customers into harm's way. And so, you know, you may want to work out a situation to where they can work in a certain area or do a certain task or a certain job. And then again, the face shield might be another opportunity for them. If they wear a face shield, then that will help as well. That doesn't restrict airflow. It is a little bit more cumbersome because it does go across the top of your head, all the way down in front of your face. So a face shield may be an option for them. And remember, if you require your employees to wear masks and there are minimum wage employees, you do need to make sure that you provide those masks to be in compliant with the United States Department of Labor. It's no different than a uniform.
Douglas, I'm sure folks will think about some questions later this afternoon and maybe in the next day or so. And what's the best route for them to pose those questions?
Sure. There is a contact box on the Palmetto Priority.com website. You can type those into the comment box. Our phone number is actually also listed there. I will tell you, we are running a limited staff in the office just to be able to social distance. We don't want all the employees in the office at the same time, so we're all rotating time inside the office to be able to make sure we social distance as well. And then also email is a great opportunity to reach us. And our email address at the association is info@scrla.org, info@scrla.org. So at this time, I want to go ahead and thank everybody for attending. We certainly appreciate it. And we hope you all have a wonderful day. Again, this is available in a recording on our SCLA YouTube channel. We'll get that loaded probably by the end of the business day today. Thank y'all.
Thanks. Stay well.